Chapter 2. The Black Dog. The rain came down with a vengeance. The wind swished through the trees, making them bend and sway. The road turned to mire, and still they had 2 or 3 miles before they reached Gloucester city centre. The mules bowed their heads into the driving rain. The squeaks and mewlings in the sacks ceased. The wooden wheels ground along the deep water-logged ruts, heavy with wet, sticky, clinging mud which sent out a spray with every turn and coated the dogs outside. Their legs kept running incessantly, also sending out muddy sprays, running, because they had no choice but to keep their legs moving, tied as they were to the axle. Jester was lucky. As Meshach's dog, he was allowed in the wagon. Meshach pulled the flaps tightly shut to keep out the damp cold. The brats all looked at him with long, doleful glances as he snuggled up to Jester for warmth. He shut his eyes so as not to witness their despair. He felt hungry. They felt hungry. They were starving. Probably hadn't eaten since dawn. He didn't want to know. Didn't want to think about it. He had an apple in his pocket. He took it out with his eyes still closed and began to munch. He knew they were staring at him, with their eyes huge with longing. He ate it as quickly as he could and fed the core to Jester. There was a shudder of repressed envy from the brats. They would have fallen eagerly on it and eaten every scrap if they could. Jester swallowed the core in a gulp. It was dark now. The rain still beat down on the canvas covering, and for a while they were mesmerized by the rhythmic swish and sway of the wagon and the hollow slurpy plod of the animals' hooves. There was a stir of surprise and a quiver of anxiety among the children when the creaking of the wheels stopped and they came to a halt. Apart from the sound of the rain and the snorting of mules blowing away the rain from their nostrils, there was no other sound. They were not yet within earshot of the city. Meshach sat up, his arms still clasped round Jester. The brat's eyes gleamed in the darkness. They seemed not to have moved a muscle since he had climbed inside to get out of the rain half an hour ago. He heard Otis jump down. The light of his lantern swung a yellow shaft across the canvas. Then the flap opened and his dark, drenched face looked in. Rain was spangled through his thick, straggly hair, reflecting in the light like so many diamonds. He nodded curtly to Meshach. "Get the spade. There's a good ditch just here. We'll dig them in." He jerked his head in the direction of the panniers strapped to the train of mules. "I don't want to take them into Gloucester." Meshach jumped out and had to tie the flap to keep Jester in, so he then set up a continuous barking. Meshach knew from many, many times before that they couldn't have Jester digging anything up. It was a hurried affair, in all that wind and rain and darkness and the swinging light from the storm lantern, which Otis hung on a branch directly over the ditch. Otis plunged in his spade. Nothing too deep or careful. There was a lot of water. Just dig a hole deep enough to submerge the bundles. Foxes would do the rest. He wouldn't have bothered bearing them had he not taken money for them and given undertakings. Otis dug and Meshach went from mule to mule, extricating one bundle after another from the panniers to hand to his father, who dropped them like seeds into the ditch. Meshach stared wonderingly as they sank into the mud and vanished even before his father had shoveled a few spadefuls of earth over them. What was it like to be dead? Meshach tried to imagine. What did they see under the mud? Would they find angels there? Angels like the ones he saw in church windows? They came to the last one, the one the lady had given them on the other side. Meshach hesitated. "Come on, lad, drop it in," rasped Otis. "Moving. Still alive," stammered Meshach. "Usually, if they weren't dead, they at least try to sell them off first. Not worth it. Drop it in, I say." Meshach let go the feebly moving bundle. He heard it splosh into the ditch. He backed away, whimpering. He never did like bearing live ones. He felt the apple he had just eaten rise with the bile up his gullet. He vomited against a tree, leaning his head into the bark so that it left an imprint on his brow. "Don't go lily-livered on me," snarled Otis, grabbing his coat and herding his son back to the wagon. Jester was still barking. "Get on in. Mrs. Peebles is expecting us tonight at the Black Dog." Jester stopped barking. Meshach didn't need eyes to know that they had entered Gloucester. Despite the constant thud of rain onto the canvas covering, he heard the swell of sound. It came towards them like a distant wave and then crashed over them, an overwhelming cacophony of babble, all the stuff of humans and their animals and their livelihoods. He had been dozing, lying with his face still partly buried in Jester's fur, relishing the sounds of the city while not yet ready to face it. He didn't even open the flap when he heard the wagon and the mules' hooves clattering over cobblestones, nor when he smelt the stench of open sewers and foraging pigs, and the manure of horses and mules and wet straw intermingled with women's perfume, and polished leather and charcoal fires and grilled fish. He knew without looking by the heavy smell of beer and raucous sounds of fiddling and singing that they had entered the courtyard of the Black Dog Inn. No good getting too excited yet. There were jobs to be done. The wagon unhitched, the mules unloaded, water pumped, hay gathered, stable space negotiated. "I want to piss," whimpered a child. Oh yes, and the brats seemed to. He would have to rope them all together so they wouldn't run away, and lead them out of the far gate to relieve themselves in all that rain and mud, and then go to the kitchen and get them some gruel. It reminded him of how hungry he was. It was still raining. Girls in bonnets and shawls slopped across the yard to and from the kitchen, fetching and carrying water for the cook, or chickens for the slaughter, and buckets of swill and scrapings for the animals. Young lads, eager to make a few pennies, rushed forward to grab the bridles and lead the mules to the barns, clamouring to offer their services. Otis selected 3 of them, yelled out orders, and then made for the door of the inn. "See to things. I'll be inside," he yelled, leaving Meshach squelching about in the yard, ankle-deep in mud and manure. Meshach saw to things, as he always did, but began to feel his stomach tightening with hunger, especially with the smell of roast beef coming from the kitchen. He was almost tempted to eat the gruel dolloped out from the kitchen for the brats, though just looking at it made him want to puke. He was sure even the pigs wouldn't eat it, but the brats fell upon it. He took the wagon and children into a barn to stay for the night. As he closed the huge wooden doors, one of the brats called out plaintively, "Can't we have a light, mister?" Meshach didn't bother to answer, and pulling the doors to, dropped the great latch and locked them into the pitch, rat-scuttling darkness.